Hey, sports fans, Larry Eder here. This is Conversations with Larry. Um, Today, we're going to talk about Jan Johnson. Jan was a dear friend of mine. He's one of the reasons why American athletics and American track and field succeeded. And I want to tell you a little bit about him. Jan was 75 when he died on the 23rd of February, and I miss him. He was a great friend. I met Jan back in 1982 via telephone when I was at Runner's World. He was the team manager at Hind Clothing, which was a trend-setting clothing line. They were the first ones to do in North America to do sports tights. They did some great shorts. Gary Gettleman hit Ryan Sports, carried Hind, and I raced in the product for a long time. Jan was the 1972 Olympic bronze medalist in the pole vault, NCAA champion, he set a world record in the pole vault. In high school, he and his brother Tim at Bloom High School outside of Chicago were American record holders in the high school pole vault. Bloom was a very diverse high school and a very rough high school. 50% of the kids dropped out before graduation. Jan never really talked about that. He talked about his great experience. While being at Bloom High School, he was coached by the one, the only Steve Miller. Steve would come back into his life later when Jan was coaching at San Luis Obispo, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. Jan went on to Kansas after high school and left Kansas quickly. Bob Timmons, the coach there, demanded that Jan cut his hair. And anybody who knew Jan, I'm not sure Jan used the F word. Jan just applied for Alabama and went down to Alabama where he graduated, matriculated. He also helped Bear Bryant with the football team in terms of as a trainer. And Jan won the NCAA title while he was at Alabama. He went on to win an Olympic bronze medal, which is no mean feat. Competed against Bob Seagren, the gold, and Wolfgang Nordig, who was the gold medalist from East Germany. Whole nother story in itself. One of my favorite stories about Jan was that one of his roommates was young guy named Steve Prefontaine, and they traveled across Europe together. And Pre liked to hold the poles as they were going through airports. And it would just be by accident that Pre would bump up or nudge a very beautiful woman. And Pre being the 22, 23-year-old horn dog that he was, it was a great way to introduce himself to young, beautiful European women. And then they spent some time in Stockholm with the U.S. Olympic team before the Munich 72 Olympics. And Jan wrote in a story for me in 1995 about some remembrances of Pre, a workout where he watched Pre run 412, 408, 404, 402. And Pre then went on to take fourth in what I consider to be one of the best 5,000s in the history of the Olympics, of the 1972 Olympic final. Jan wanted to make the Olympic team in Montreal, and he was in the pole vault, and he was injured, and then also tried in the decathlon and was injured. So he regrouped, went to graduate school, and started coaching at Cal Poly under Steve Miller. And his legacy was not only developing several generations of pole vaulters, but starting the sky jumpers camps. He was also an inventor, and he built a pole vault safety helmet and several additions to pole vault boxes so that it increased safety in the sport. He was an author, and he was a dear friend. He would call people Hoss. This was a term he uses, a Janism, about people who perhaps were ill-equipped for the modern world or for the pole vault world. He was in the surf culture, the skate culture, and the pole vault culture. And at his memorial, all those people were there, and I was fortunate enough to meet many of his friends. We all saw different parts of him, and the Chelsea Johnson Hardy, his daughter, a world championship silver medalist from Berlin 2009. She's married to Trey Hardy, the fine Olympic and world champ decathlete, and now NBC announcer extraordinaire. Um, Chelsea quoted American Track and Field from 1995 and talked about Jan's tribute to Prefontaine, and where Jan said something to the effect, "I miss you, brother. My life is so complicated now. Um, Bills to pay, people to worry about, things to do." And Jan had his demons like we all did do. What Jan did for me, he was the first advertiser for American Athletics back in 1989 with Hind. Then he bought an ad for Sky Jumpers. He and John Powell were my two spiritual advisors, and they both kept me sane during some really crazy times in my life, and uh, I owe them both a lot. Jan was one of the most positive people I'd ever met, and most years Jan and I would get together at the Wisconsin Coaches Clinic the night before, grab a dinner, a couple beers, and catch up. One thing Jan told me was to always be underestimated because then you kept things under control. And Jan was again a great friend, and I miss him terribly. I was able to give my best to his son Clay, his daughter Chelsea, and his ex-wife Janny, and friends. And I think of him often. I'll be writing a couple pieces on Run Blog Run about him. One is Six Separations of with Jan Johnson, and another one is a piece that I'm trying to put together after hearing Johnny Cash's song "Hurt." But I'll tell you more about that. But again, Jan Johnson, I miss you, man. Thank you for being a great friend. And the way that I look at life, this mortal coil, is that when we leave our mortal engines, we're just in another frequency. And so I'll be dreaming about Jan and hearing his stories and hearing his voice. But I miss seeing my buddy at the U.S. champs. I'll probably walk around the pole vault and look for him. So, and I hope you do too. But Jan Johnson, thinking about you, buddy. This is Larry Eder with Conversations with Larry, and this was in memory of Jan Johnson.